Greetings, my fellow freedom low-sovereign thinkers. Thank you for tuning to LL3-Podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful realms of planet Earth. Today's date is Sunday, April 6, 2025. This is episode 1827. Trump administration's double standard, hands-off protest, and reporter exposes conflict of interest judge, and beyond. Why not? I'm going to add something to it. Before I proceed, you can follow me on multiple social media sites and podcast channels. Just type in Lucky Luck number 3, Lucky Luck Roman number 3, 3 eyes, or Lucky Luck Roman number 3 podcast. Furthermore, if you have any questions, comments, recommendations, all that good stuff, whatever you do, please use decorum. Hit me via email to ll3-podcast@proton.me. If you want to donate, go to PayPal.me or cash.app/Lucky Luck number 3. If you want to give me a little crypto love, you can follow me at Steemit LL3-Podcast. Oh my goodness, looks like I goofed up, but that's okay. And I'm just kicking back, having a good time, and I'm just listening to the whole hands-off protest, people taking photos. I was there, I felt so proud of calling out Donald Trump, calling him a fascist, and hands off on my federal job, which the people out there, my boss don't know how to use the money wisely. I want federal government out the world, the federal government to tell me how to live, how to think, how to wipe my butt. Ain't that great, folks? Come on, man. Admit it. All those people that had that protest yesterday got their heart on for Donald Trump. And don't get me wrong, if you're going to be critical, have merit. Don't be a parrot. These faction slaves were in heat out there. Yay! I am so courageous. Yay! What a bunch of hired fools get caught in that media manipulation and they go, yeah, I want to do it, man. Face value, no fine print, right? But when their team gets in, when it comes to usurpation, they're my hero. I love them dearly because they had that D or R under their belt. Democrat, Republican. To all you faction slaves out there, you got my condolences. You want to believe the one-dimensional rhetoric you hear from this garbage media, even on your, you go online, the internet, you still got the garbage sites you watch on TV and listen on the radio? Come on, get a brain. And I'm not saying I'm better than anyone else. I boldly admit that. However, it's always got to look at things, the bigger picture. Noah Webster warned us about this. Faction destroys liberty. Speaking of media manipulation, there's got today of the 100-day Holocaust in Rwanda that happened 31 years ago. 800,000 to 1 million Rwandans were murdered by the governmental thugs and their criminal lackeys. Mostly machetes, by the way. You could thank victim disarmament for that. Yeah, we gotta be like every other country. We need tougher gun laws. I trust the state. I think. That's why I get a big kick out of these folks. When I do my activism, I like to teach, share information. I'm not here going on a pedestal. You gotta listen to me or else. I've seen that multiple times. It is comical, my friends. Doesn't matter where it's at. Occupy, Tea Party, don't matter. You're always going to have geniuses in the crowd. Doesn't mean that everyone in there are bad folks. Absolutely not. There's some good people everywhere, even in these movements. They want to stick to principles, which I do respect. But the fact is this. You got to attack them on a local level. Think and act locally. You think getting rid of Trump and getting rid of Trump is going to set you free? Forget about it. Tyranny's been going on for a very long time and you need to study more U.S. history, or history of the world to be exact. That's how you got to see things, you know? And I just really get a big kick out of a lot of these people. Don't get too distracted. I know it's supposed to be about this big case about this one gentleman got arrested for stabbing a person, and what occurred was they're exploiting that. I've seen it on Facebook, and I don't know how accurate it is. I haven't really paid too much attention, but question everything, okay? Remember what happened with the horrific event that occurred in Sanford, Florida, with George Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin was shot dead. And everyone went after George Zimmerman, called him a racist, and Black Lives Matter started. So, Keo Bono, who benefits? Let's get a Marxist institution, a movement that will use people. And they exploit this big time. I call it the Lizzie Borden effect. If you look up Lizzie Borden, she murdered her parents allegedly, and that town in was it Chestnut? I think it's called, in Massachusetts. They hyped it up. They all believed she was guilty. Even during the grand jury, they did charge her. There was a merit to the case. However, she was acquitted by a jury of her peers, and a lot of those folks out there were shell shocked. This is why you got to observe responsibly. Do a little homework on tariffs, don't get me wrong. Yeah, it is risky, but I am tired of big government, regardless if they're run by Democrats, Republicans, etc. When the federal government knows best, it turns to crap. That means even in government in general. I do find it very ludicrous on that event yesterday. I was not impressed. Not at all. They're all angry. Oh, yeah, gotta get rid of Donald Trump, not my president. But if you vote for the other clowns, you're a bunch of hypocrites. Because you supported insurrections from an insurrectionist, treasonous Tim Walz, who was the vice president running mate, who can't even wipe his own butt. It's like Dumb and Dumber. But you don't talk about that because I'm a registered Democrat. Yeah. And I'm a registered Republican. You can't say that anything bad about Abraham Lincoln. I can speak my mind, criticize whoever I want, including the Israeli government, Russian government. Don't matter. I get them all. And I know they had this cute little skit that talk about Donald Trump's tariffs in Australia. Look, you guys, with all due respect, your government is very crappy too. To all you Trump haters out there, you're considered cult members. The Jim Jones effect. Drink that Kool-Aid, go, yeah, I want to follow the lead herd, man. That goes for anyone else that can't contemplate for themselves. Now I'm saying, like I said before, I'm not better than you. Never gonna make that statement or believe I'm an entitlement. We got the information age. What the hell are you utilizing it for? Too much garbage out there. And I digress. So I'm going to be reading here before my other titles, as I say, and beyond. This one came from Law Enforcement Today. Came out today, to be exact, by Jenna Curran. Notorious gang member who murdered NYPD cop in the 1980s could be released from prison early. A gang member who murdered New York Police Department officer Edward Byrne as he sat in his patrol car guarding the South Jamaica home of a witness who was planning to testify against drug lord Howard Pappy Mason, could become the 44th convicted cop killer released from prison early when he faces a parole board later this month. Wow. South Jamaica, that's in Queens if I'm correct. According to the New York Post, Byrne was murdered in Queens in 1988 by David McClary on an order of a drug kingpin. The violent incident happened when the city was in the thick of a crack epidemic of the 1980s and became a national symbol of the era's lawlessness. Byrne was just 22 years old and on the force for a month when he was ambushed by McClary and three accomplices on February 26, 1988. McClary snuck up on Byrne as he sat alone in a marked patrol vehicle. McClary shot Byrne 5 times in the head. Byrne killing was so impactful that then President Ronald Reagan called his family to offer condolences, and later President George Herbert Walker Bush brought the officer's badge with him to the Oval Office. There he kept it on his desk. Mason, 65, was one who ordered Byrne's murder from jail. He was sentenced to life in prison for drug racketeering charges that include Byrne's murder. He is currently being held at Devens, a federal prison in Ayers, Massachusetts. The three accomplices were convicted of murder. The getaway car Scott Hobb was paroled in 2023. The two other men, Todd Scott and Philip Copeland, are still in prison. McClary, who is now 59 years old, has served 36 years of his maximum life sentence. He comes up for parole on an unknown date later in April, which will be his 8th hearing so far. Speaking out for the first time in decades, the Byrne family expressed their anger and frustration. Kenneth Byrne, Edward's brother, said, This was someone who was clearly the most culpable and dangerous out of the group, but to this day he still denies any knowledge of what was going to happen that night, even though it was very clear that they all sat around the table and planned this and drew straws on who was going to execute my brother. Kenneth, who was a lawyer, added this was an absolutely shocking crime executed by a uniformed police officer in a marked car protecting the witness who was being tortured by his drug gang. The witness' home was also firebombed. Kenneth said he should not be released. I don't care what alleged accomplishments he has in prison. Kenneth is preparing a victim impact statement he will be sending to the parole board and as they make the decision to release McClary or not. Former Governor Andrew Cuomo appointed 12 of the state parole board's current 16 members. The board has released 43 cop killers since 2017, after Cuomo reshaped how the board decides whether to grant parole. The new guidelines require the board to consider the inmate's progress while incarcerated, as well as their risk to society, with such factors outweighing the egregiousness of the original crime. The board also considers age, and many of the parole inmates have been 60 or older. Todd Shapiro, a spokesman for Mayor Eric Adams, said that as a former NYPD officer who has personally experienced the profound loss of colleagues in the line of duty, Adams urges the parole board to deny David McClary's release. He added, "We must uphold the principle that murder of a police officer is an intolerable offense, warranting a full measure of justice. Our commitments to the safety and respect of our law enforcement community necessitates unwavering support and the assurance that such sacrifices are forgotten." Police Benevolent Association President Mike Patrick Hendry is asking New Yorkers to go to the union's website and sign a petition to keep this cop killer behind bars. He said, after Eddie was assassinated, cops and the New Yorkers banded together to send a message that vicious drug dealers do not rule our streets, and we cannot let the parole board erase that message. To be very frank, I can't blame them for this. I do commend on what they're doing. Let McClary rot in there for the rest of his entire life, as far as I'm concerned, based on this article. A young police officer was murdered in cold blood. Why the hell are you going to let that person go out? Come out. And with Mason, is in federal prison in Iris, Massachusetts. We're going to let him out. What does the guy do with New York? As far as I know, it should be in New York prison, right? To be very honest, but it looks like it made into a federal law. But regardless of what you think, it is unacceptable, as far as I'm concerned. Let that man rot. If he repent for his actions, that's all well and good. He can be forgiven, but the penalty has to be upheld. Life in prison. So that's how I look at it, in good faith. Still got to pay the price. It's a real shame. He had one gentleman, very young, who was murdered in cold blood, 22 years old. So keep on petitioning. Let that man rot. This is from nationalpulse.com. That's probably my first plan to narrate, but this came up. I find it essential as well. Says here to talk if you want. Trump administration raises concerns after pro-life activists fined tens of thousands for violating clinic buffer zone. Here's the Post point. What happened? A pro-life activist was found guilty of violating a buffer zone outside an abortion clinic in Britain and received a 2-year conditional discharge along with equivalent of tens of thousands of dollars in fines, like Euro dollars. Who was involved? Livia Tuoshige-Bolt, a retired medical scientist, pool magistrate, court district judge Oral Austin, the United States Department of State, and the British Pregnancy Advisory Service, or BPAS. Say it in full. A British judge has convicted a pro-life campaigner, Livia Tuoshige-Bolt, for breaching a buffer zone around an abortion clinic. The 64-year-old woman was handed a 2-year conditional discharge in order to pay the equivalent of $25,700 toward court costs alongside $33,400 victim surcharge for her actions outside of abortionist facility in March 2023. The so-called buffer zone established by the municipal government spans 10 streets. District Judge Orla Austin emphasized the need to balance freedom of expression under the European Convention on Human Rights with the rights of women visiting abortionists. The court found Tuoshige-Bolt guilty of displaying a sign simply saying, "Here to talk if you want." Tuoshige-Bolt expressed dismay over ruling and saying, "It is a dark day for Great Britain. I was not protesting, did not harass or obstruct anyone." Her case caught the attention of the U.S. State Department's Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights and Labor, DRL. We are monitoring her case. It is important that the UK respect and protect freedom of expression, the Bureau said. The United Kingdom has some of the strictest laws in the Western world regarding abortion clinics. People have been arrested and convicted for as little as silently praying in their heads near abortionists. Last year, a poll of members of the British Parliament revealed a majority wanted to decriminalize abortion all the way up to birth. So they probably want murdered, right? How pathetic these people are in the Parliament. You guys got a bunch of wankers too, you know? It's just really disturbing indeed. Common law and possibly violating Magna Carta of 1215. You know, they want to do everything they can to suppress people on their views. If this is the case, here to talk if you want. She has that sign up. So who got offended by it? That's the question. If there's no victim, how's that a crime? I could tell those idiots involved in charging her in Britain. Tell me what a crime is in Great Britain. And convince me why you can. But interesting, because they're like, the Trump administration is concerned about that. How about here? This is from naturalnews.com. Trump administration suspends federal grants to Princeton University amid anti-Semitism probe. It's by Raymond Tomey. And as it reads here, Trump administration froze dozens of research grants to Princeton University, citing ongoing anti-Semitism investigations. Agencies like the DOE, NASA, and DOD halted funding without detailed explanations. Princeton joins Columbia, UPenn, and Harvard in facing federal suspensions tied to anti-Semitism probe. The DOE previously warned 60 universities to address anti-Jewish bias or face consequences. So this is some of the stuff here. A complaint by campus reforms editor cited a pro-Palestinian protest at Princeton where chants like Intifada were heard alleging anti-Semitism. The university denies tolerating discrimination. Princeton, which received $467 million in federal grants last year, faced a significant financial strain. Columbia recently complied with federal demands to restore $400 million in funding, while Harvard undergoes an audit of $8.7 billion in grants. Princeton's president, Christopher Eisgruber, pledged cooperation but vowed to defend academic freedom, earlier comparing the administration's tactics to the 1950s Red Scare. The government is using Title VI of the Civil Rights Act to pressure universities on discrimination policies. Well, that's what the article has to say here. The Trump administration has suspended dozens of research grants to Princeton University in New Jersey, escalating its crackdown on Ivy League institutions on investigation for alleged anti-Semitism. Princeton President Christopher L. confirmed the freeze, revealing that agencies including the Department of Energy, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, and the Department of Defense halted funding for multiple research projects. While the administration has not provided detailed reasoning, the move aligns with a broader federal campaign targeting elite universities over campus discrimination complaints. Princeton now joins Columbia University, the University of Pennsylvania, and Harvard University in facing federal funding suspensions tied to anti-Semitism investigations. Ellsgruber pledged cooperation with government inquiries, but vows to defend academic freedom. We are committed to fighting anti-Semitism and all forms of discrimination, and we will cooperate with the government in combating anti-Semitism, he wrote in a campus-wide email sent Tuesday, April 1st. Princeton will also vigorously defend academic freedom and due process rights of this university. Suspension follows a March warning from the Department of Education to 60 universities threatening enforcement actions if they fail to address alleged anti-Jewish bias. Princeton has already been under federal investigation since April 2024. Interesting. So this is more like some issues in the past, right? The probe was initiated after Zachary Mashal, editor-in-chief on campus reform, filed a complaint citing a pro-Palestinian protest at Princeton where chants such as Intifada were heard. Marshall accused the university of ignoring what he called anti-Semitic rhetoric. From protest to punishment, the high-stakes battle over campus speech, the second Trump administration's aggressive stance reflects President Donald Trump's repeated vows to combat campus anti-Semitism, which he has linked to pro-Palestinian activism. Federal officials have characterized some students' demonstrators as pro-Hamas, which is pretty damn ridiculous, okay? So Mossad approved to be exact. While activists insist their protest target is really military action, not Jewish people. The administration has also deported foreign students tied to protests and intensified scrutiny of Middle East studies programs. Princeton, with a $34 billion endowment, received $456 billion in federal grants last year, making the suspension a significant financial blow. The Anti-Defamation League gave the university an F grade for its handling of anti-Semitism. Remember, the Anti-Defamation League lies about militias, gun control, and Judaism. That's according to late, great Aaron Zellman from the Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership. May his soul be forever free. Meanwhile, Columbia recently agreed to federal demands, including revising disciplinary policies and its Middle East curriculum. To restore $400 million in frozen funds over Massachusetts, Harvard now faces an audit of $8.7 billion in grants by Federal Anti-Semitism Task Force. Wow. Els Gruberger, a vocal critic of the administration's tactics, previously condemned the Columbia sanctions as a radical threat to scholarly excellence in an essay published last month in the Atlantic magazine. He likened the current climate to the Red Scare of the 1950s, warning of eroding academic freedoms. The administration is leveraging Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, which bars federal funding to institutions that enables discrimination based on religion or national origin. While Princeton has not been formally accused of violating the law, the suspension signaled a hardline approach that could reshape campus policies nationwide. And this is a little clip here about the federal grants, drunk on power. Let's see what he has to say here.
For more on this, let's bring in American Culture Project Senior Fellow and Educational Freedom Institute Executive Director, Corey DeAngelis. Corey, thanks for joining us this afternoon. I want to begin with some comments from the Education Secretary on all this.
This is not about free speech. This is about violence to students, attacking faculty. They need to call in the police. They need to get rid of this. But other than that, I think there's some systemic issues. We keep seeing this over and over again. And why is that? We have radical professors on campus. They're not really vetting the students who are coming in as much as they should be. What money is coming in from foreign influence? And all of that, I think, is playing into this.
Corey, some students at Columbia have reportedly said they hope this is a wake-up call for the administration. Do you think it will be?
I hope it is, but you have so many leftist professors and administrators on campus that they've been so drunk on power for so long they might not be able to reverse course. So the $400 million is welcome in pulling that amount of funding, but it should be just a start. They have about $5 billion in federal commitments and grants to Columbia University, which raises the question of why do they need this much taxpayer money to begin with? They charge students about $70,000 a year in tuition and fees to attend Columbia University. Why do they need a single penny of taxpayer resources? It also raises the question of, why should taxpayers be funding for leftist indoctrination that goes beyond this anti-Jewish sentiment on campus? Why are conservatives, why are independents forced to fund through their hard-earned taxpayer dollars leftist professors at Columbia University and other colleges for that matter?
Now, Columbia has lost the university president over this. The university says it's expelled a couple of students, that it talked to the New York Police Department, had them break up some of the encampments last year. What else could Columbia be doing here?
Yeah, well, they should not have as much of this rhetoric spewed on campus from their professors. Look, these students don't get like this out of nowhere, right? They have to increase enforcement on campus, but they also shouldn't be having this type of critical race theory type of ideology in the classroom that tells students to hate their country. I mean, this happens at the K through 12 level too. This doesn't bubble up out of nowhere. We had a nationally representative survey that came out of Education Next finding that 36% of U.S. high school students reported that often or almost daily their teachers were telling them that, quote, America is a fundamentally racist nation. Then you see problems like this happen on campus. It doesn't come out of nowhere. So I think they need to increase enforcement, but they should also Trump should put his foot on the gas. This should just be a start. It's a welcome change, and it's the right thing to do. And hopefully they listen. I just don't know if they're going to reverse course.
Here in D.C., there's discussion reporting that the Education Department, the Federal Department of Education, is going to be going away. This is what Democrats had to say about that.
It will mean students stuck with outdated technology. It will mean less access to special education for students with disabilities. And
that's from Patty Murray, by the way.
Will have to pick up the cost. It will mean no enforcement of basic education standards and no data helping us know what is working and what is not working.
So, Corey, what happens if the Federal Department of Education goes away?
The Democrats have Trump derangement syndrome. They have no idea what they're talking about, or they're just gaslighting and haven't read the bill by Senator Mike Rounds out of South Dakota, a Republican, called the Returning Education to the States Act. The money doesn't go away, doesn't dissolve like it does currently. It's wasted on useless bureaucrats in D.C., 4,400 of them. The actual bill proposes to have block grants where the funding goes through the Treasury Department back to the states, depending on the amount of students that you have there. She mentioned students with special needs. All those programs would move under the Department of Health and Human Services. You think about special civil rights protections, that would move under the Department of Justice. Things like Pell Grants and student loans, that would move under the Department of Treasury as well. So the radical left and the Democrats are trying to use this as an opportunity to invoke fear-mongering, to try to win some elections, but that I don't think the American public is going to fall for the gaslighting. If you just read the bill, you'll see that this isn't as disruptive of a policy as they're trying to make it out to be. If anything, it allows for more funding for education because you're not wasting as much of it on paper pushers in D.C. You'd be able to spend more of that money at the state level. You'd have more local control for K-12 education. That's how it should be. The U.S. Department of Education is unconstitutional. It's the word education is not in the Constitution, and it's a violation of the 10th Amendment. So let's do what Trump says, and let's do what the American people want. They want to return education to the states. He campaigned on this issue, and guess what? Trump won the parent vote by 9 points. He's showing the American people why.
Well, a lot of this is going to be up to Congress. They're debating it. We'll see what comes out the other end. Corey DeAngelis, thanks so much for joining us. Much appreciated.
Very interesting indeed, and I'm not a big fan of Fox News in general, but the solid point is a 10th Amendment issue. The Department of Education has always been a burden since what came out in 1980. So that's right. Let's shrink the federal government more. Let the states control it. That's what I like about the 10th Amendment. And this is why it really dawns on me, if that's the case, if students are paying $70,000, okay, for tuition to go to Columbia University, what the hell are they going to use that? What the hell the rest of the money goes to? That's just one area. And what you need more grants, more taxpayers' money from the federal government? No. And there's people out there, you need the state should do that. Yeah, it should be a state issue, even with these public universities. Okay, don't be so delusional. Oh, shall I be incorporated with the United States government? I want D.C. to tell me what I can say or I can't, so I won't get any money. Come on, folks. Grow up. I just find that amazing. And it's interesting, too, because even we always got to be very leery or vigilant when it comes to free speech in general, because some of the students, as they maybe speak in their mind, but are all of them actually harassing students that are considered Jewish or Israelis? I'm against that. I'm against them being violated by any means. That's to everyone in there. Doesn't matter who they are. Okay, if they use violence against them, that's been renounced. Then you got the merit. But if you're going to be critical towards the Israeli government and say that it's anti-Semitic, then you're delusional. I'm sorry. And this is what Ron Paul has to say about this. It came out on the 31st. Free speech is worth fighting for. It's from the Ron Paul Institute in his weekly column. We do not have free speech to talk about the weather. Our founders, particularly James Madison, who drafted the Bill of Rights, understood that our rights are not privileges granted to us by government. No, it was understood at the founding that these basic natural rights outlined by Madison were granted by our Creator, and thus no mere mortal could take them away. When they say creators, it's actually from the representing universal cosmos, not a particular religious deity. Okay, so just to clarify that. And first among these is the First Amendment, which recognizes that most basic of our natural rights, the right to express ourselves in any way we wish. Unfortunately, the U.S. government has not always been in accord with this sentiment, and has many times in our history been at war with our freedom of speech. From the Alien and Sedition Acts at the beginning of a republic to Abraham Lincoln's war on speech to the jailing of anti-war activists during both world wars to Kent State. The political class is all for free speech unless it is threatening to the political class. Recently, a new front has been opened in the war on free speech, and it is one that Americans must take seriously. Our university campuses across the country, students, both American and foreign guests, have taken to protest in U.S. support for Israel's actions in Gaza, where tens of thousands of innocent civilians have been killed. The political class in the United States is determined to defend Israel from its critics and has responded to these protests by threatening and blackmailing universities if they do not crack down on speech. The powers that be not like. Both Presidents Biden and Trump have used the power of U.S. government funding to demand a crackdown on speech they don't like, with President Trump recently putting $400 million in federal funding for Columbia University if they don't silence the protesters. The real scandal is that nearly every U.S. university, both public and private, is government funded in the first place, but for politicians to use the power of the purse to deny students the right to express themselves as long as peaceful, just as insult to injury. Last week, a Turkish PhD student at Tufts University was arrested on the street by plainclothes government agents for reportedly simply writing an editorial in a university newspaper expressing her views on the Israel-Palestine conflict. She faces deportation from the country, and she is not alone. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has openly bragged about sending hundreds of students home because they express a political position he disagrees with. Others, including American citizens, have been expelled from their schools and have even had their degrees rescinded for peacefully expressing a political position that powerful people in Washington disagree with. You may also agree with the political position of these students, but to cheer the punishment by U.S. government is to turn your back on the founding principles of this country. Freedom of speech is a natural right, not reserved for American citizens, but for all of humanity. And it has been a natural right worth defending for nearly 250 years. First, they came for foreign students expressing controversial positions, and many Americans cheered because they were not foreign and did not like the opinions. But make no mistake, this war on speech will not end only with foreigners being punished. It never does. In other words, my friends, it becomes a ripple effect. So that's things I questioned when these people were being detained and possible deportation for constructively criticizing an entity. And that's what I say is unacceptable. That's why I'm pro-free speech. It's for all of humanity. It is a natural right, not a privilege that's granted by government, but from our Creator, from the universal cosmos. What can I say? So question everything. How accurate is the information coming out from the mainstream news and beyond? Well, that's what I got to say on this matter. All right, we're going to talk about the protest. A couple articles from yournews.com. The first one here from that site. Protests break out nationwide as Soros-Funded Indivisible demands hands off U.S. institutions. Came out today. Thousands gathered in cities nationwide Saturday for rallies led by Soros-backed Indivisible organization, calling on Trump and Congress to halt their reform agenda. Coordinated by progressive activists, Indivisible, the hands-off protest mobilized thousands of demonstrators in major U.S. cities over the weekend to oppose President Trump's policies on health care, education, and government oversight. Yeah, we want bigger government, centralized. Woo! We demand we keep it. Organizers claim their objective was to send a clear message to their administration and Republican lawmakers. Take your hands off our health care, our Social Security, our civil rights, our freedom, and our education, according to CBS News. Wow. Unbelievable, right? Footage from the event circulated across social media platforms, including clips from the protests in Washington, D.C. and New York City, where activists carried signs, chanted slogans, and marched under banners denouncing what they describe as dismantling of democratic norms. Let's see here what Ezra Levin has to say. So they look like I'm a glam boy with her twin fraternal unofficial twin sister, Rachel Maddow. Let's check this out. One moment.
Feels like it, right? That said, may I suggest that you go to bed kind of early, hydrate, eat your Rudens in the morning, maybe put off that Friday night cocktail to make it a Saturday night cocktail this week, if at all. I'm only saying that because tomorrow is going to be very busy. Saturday is going to be very busy. I said at the top of the show there are more than 1,200 protests planned for tomorrow in all 50 states. I stand corrected. It is more than 1,300 protests planned in more than in all 50 states. It's expected to be the largest single day of protest since Donald Trump took office. Joining us now is Ezra Levin. He's co-founder of Indivisible, which is one of the groups that is promoting these events tomorrow. Ezra, thanks very much for joining us tonight. You were here just a couple of 3 weeks ago talking about the earliest idea for April 5th being sort of a hub for events all over the country and in Washington. How has the organizing gone? What has the response been compared to what you expected?
Gosh, Rachel, it's been incredible. Can I just say it has been incredible? We knew when we announced 3 weeks ago on the show that this was going to be the week where we saw an election in Wisconsin. We were cautiously optimistic about that election in Wisconsin for the Supreme Court. We didn't know we were going to kick Elon Musk's butt all across the state, but we were cautiously optimistic. We also didn't know that Cory Booker was going to give this incredible speech inspiring all of us and telling us that he was taking a stand in response to pushes from his own constituents. And we also didn't know that Donald Trump was going to launch a global attack on the economies of not our economy, but the global economy. This confluence of events, this sense that they are overreaching so much and there is a possibility to fight back and win is leading to this just incredible response. As you said, more than 1,300 events every single state. Yes, there are over 100 events in California. There are more than 60 in the state of New York, more than 50 in Washington. But it's not just blue states, Rachel. We see 17 events across the state of Montana, 14 across Alaska. This is everywhere. We're not just talking about one event in every state. We're talking about multiple, sometimes dozens of events. And these are normal, everyday people who are saying, hey, I've had enough. I've seen institutions fall. I've seen the universities. I've seen businesses. I've seen law firms not stand up, not support our liberal democracy. So what am I going to do as an individual? Well, I'm going to do my part. I'm going to show up. That's what tomorrow's about. And it's, gosh, Rachel, it is inspiring to see so many people hop on board this train.
The theme under which this is sort of loosely organized is hands off. I've seen people use all sorts of different types of phrasing around the different types of protests that they're going to be part of, and it seems like it's lots of different groups who are organizing, and in some cases it's no groups, it's just individual people who are coming out with their friends and neighbors. But it seems like the hands-off messaging is the most overarching phrase that we're going to hear tomorrow, the most overarching idea, right?
One of the beautiful things about this is it's meeting people where they are. We are all coming to this for a different reason. We can say, hands off the Department of Education, hands off our Social Security, hands off our Medicaid, hands off trans kids, hands off our communities, hands off our civil rights, hands off our democracy. Different things are bringing different people to this side. That's good. That's okay. We can all come together and say, and that's what we're going to do tomorrow.
Popular Front, very, 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 very big tent. If for some reason you don't like what Donald Trump is doing to the country, there's a very large tent that is open to you.
Oh, man. I'm sorry, folks. Our democracy! Hands off our democracy! Yeah, I want to be like that guy. Yeah, it looks like Rachel Maddow's twin sister, man. I'm sorry. They look and think and smell like. Trust me, if you watch this video clip, I will put the footnotes on here. It is hilarious, my friends. I'm sorry. I want to continue on. The protests were fueled by Indivisible, which received an estimated $8 million in support from George Soros' Open Society Foundation since 2017. Yes, from the Nazi collaborator himself, Jorge Soros, which he is not allowed back to his homeland of Hungary. Let that sink in, folks. The group also promoted the protest using an online forum encouraging Americans to organize additional local demonstrations. The forum stated, "This mass mobilization day is our message to the world that we do not consent to the destruction of our government and our economy for the benefit of Donald Trump and his billionaire allies." Wow. But George Soros, he's our man, the Nazi collaborator. Across the country, we are marching, rallying, and protesting the demand to stop the chaos and build an opposition movement against the looting of our country. Woo! The Indivisible co-founder Ezra Levin appears on MSNBC with Rachel Maddow. I call it the fraternal twins, to rally support ahead of the event, asserting the protests were being driven by normal, everyday people who were motivated to act amid frustration. I've seen the institutions fall. I've seen the universities. I've seen the businesses. I've seen law firms not stand up, not support our liberal democracy. Shame on you, young man, for using democracy. And remember, folks, Thomas Jefferson was a liberal. So what I'm going to do as an individual, well, I'm going to do my part. I'm going to show up, Levin said. The organization, which has been central to broader progressive opposition strategy since Trump's return to office. He has also targeted top Democrats, including Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, as reported by Your News. Indivisible pressing Schumer to resign, blaming him for not leveraging his position to block Trump's funding bill. Senator Schumer should step aside as leader. Every Democrat in the Senate should call for him to do so and begin making plans for new leadership immediately, Levin said in the statement following the bill's passage. Levin criticized Schumer for what he called waving the white flag of surrender and argued that Democrats missed a rare, precious point of leverage by allowing the legislation to move forward without stronger resistance. Indivisible has also directed its efforts at Elon Musk, who currently heads President Trump's Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. The group has coordinated protests against Musk's leadership and the DOGE initiative, including offering activists $200 to participate in demonstrations under the banner of Musk or Us. The rallies were bolstered by a range of print materials, protest signage, and messaging kits distributed by Indivisible in advance as the group continues to push back against what it views as systemic efforts to erode liberal governance and oversight under Trump's second-term policies. Yes, so what Mr. Levin has to say about it, I want bigger government. I want D.C. to control every move I make in all 50 states. How brilliant is that? Another man that looks like Rachel Maddow. I'm dead serious, man. Just watch the video, okay? It is funny, but it's like Rachel Maddow almost has sideburns too. So it is comical. I'm sorry, my friends. If you went to the rally and oh yeah, I made my statement. So what? So what? Because hey, I've done rallies too. My goal is to educate people, make impact, make waves, and even hit the commissions meeting. Think and act locally. All right. If you think getting rid of Donald Trump and Musk is going to save your freedom, your democracy, you've been disillusionized. The reason I say that because liberty is the key to prosperity, not being working for a federal government all your life. And, there's some good folks out there, but it's kind of the downside. I recommend folks reading the book from Martin L. Gross, Killing Government Iraq. He has the original one in 1992 and one in year 2000. 10% of it is mainly beneficial. Where does the rest of 90% go? I've been reading about this for a long time. That's why I'm not crazy about Musk and a lot of things either. But I'm not going to kiss his ring or anything like that, including Donald Trump. However, one thing I enjoy is the things are being revealed. But we have to really be aware too of the technocratic angle to it. Because imagine if this can be done with Doge, what else they can use on us. So always question that. Let that sink in. However, this is why I see these rallies, I'm not impressed. And I've been in these stuff like here, like they're hired, not inspired. It is boring, okay? These rallies are mainly boring. I made my statement, yeah! No, you didn't. I support decentralization. He's trying to shrink the federal government down, which is good. Any questions? Read the U.S. Constitution. All right, I'm going to do one more here. This came from yournews.com. This is in reference to Laura Loomer. Loomer reveals potential conflicts of interest involving judge blocking deportations of violent illegals. And who wrote this? From the media room, of course. District Judge James Bosberg, who is currently threatening to hold Trump administration officials in contempt over their refusal to reverse deportation orders for violent illegal aliens, is now facing serious conflict of interest allegations uncovered by investigative reporter Laura Loomer. Judge Bosberg recently issued a temporary restraining order against the Trump administration, used the Alien Enemies Act to deport over 100 violent criminal aliens mid-flight, calling executive action incredibly troublesome and problematic. He later extended the order to allow more time for the plaintiffs to prepare arguments. Now, Loomer has revealed that Bosberg's brother, Tom Bosberg, formerly employed deferred action for child arrivals DACA recipients as teachers during his tenure as superintendent of Denver Public Schools. Tom Bosberg now serves as a superintendent of the Singapore American School, which is being promoted by the U.S. State Department despite his prior policies involving undocumented immigrants, or could say illegal aliens, right? And there's a newspaper article on that, too, so good for her. Bosberg said Denver school district decided to actively recruit DACA teachers because he's seen many talents of undocumented students. So, undocumented students graduate from his own school, he wanted them to come back and teach. So he's very more pro Club of Rome. The school district does not ask applicants if they have DACA status, so it doesn't track on how many teachers that have protection. Even so, many are open throughout the hiring process. Bosberg said he reached out to colleges. Okay, so. And it has it right here, too, on the Singapore stuff and all that. So, interesting. So, yeah, she has an X account, too. Observe responsibly, folks. You know, that's like I tell everybody. Regardless if you like Laura Loomer or not, doesn't mean these people have all their information's bad, right? Absolutely. I can be very fair. There's something to really check out. I'm going to be looking down here. Loomer also identified a connection between Judge Bosberg's daughter, Catherine Bosberg, and the far-left organization Partners for Justice, which actively opposed deportations and the incarceration of violent offenders. Yep, the Club of Rome family. Yeah, New World Order and proud, right? According based on this article here, of course. And we see here, Catherine's employer, Emily Galvin Almanza, recently tweeted an article praising Bosberg's decision to block Trump's deportation order of Venezuelan gang members. Notably, Partners for Justice received 76% of its funding from the U.S. government grants, raising questions about taxpayer dollars and directly supporting an organization that backed efforts to resist the Trump administration's deportation policies. Laura Loomer also reported that Colorado has been a sharp increase in activity by the Venezuelan gang Tren de Agua, whose members are being pursued by ICE for illegally possessing high-powered weapons and taking over apartment complexes. Amidst these revelations, Loomer demanded that the Secretary of State Marco Rubio investigate why the State Department is promoting the Singapore American School, led by Tom Bosberg, and called for the impeachment of Judge James Bosberg, citing his family ties to open borders, advocacy, and taxpayer-funded activism. These revelations represent a stunning web of conflicts that must be addressed immediately. Loomer started, the judge is threatening to jail federal officials while his family is actively involved in promoting anti-deportation agendas funded by the American people. So in other words, he's a hypocrite. Another bend over Bob to the New World Order, Judge Bosberg. I just find this amazing. Oh yeah, liberty for me, but none for thee, right? Well, one thing we gotta say, my friends, when you make these promotions It's called the Pro Club of Rome. They want to fully establish a kingdom for the North American Union. So let the question that. Look up Club of Rome, you'd be surprised. Or Declaration of North America, too. Like about illegal immigration, all that good stuff. So I was like looking, I'm like checking this out here. Let's see what Laura Loomer has to say here. Oh, okay. Yep. Talking about him being impeached and all that. Yep, Catherine Bosberg is very similar on here on the tweet. But yeah, so she based on this, she did good. Woo. Sorry, baby. Sorry about that. Well, one thing we know for sure, my friends, it is insane as usual. Because the fact is, you're always going to have these infiltrators, provocateurs, and hacks in these positions. And they don't want to tell you how to think, live, and wipe your own butt. You know what? I could give two craps about these clowns. Yeah, impeach his ass. Get him for treason, too. As far as I'm concerned, for aiding and abetting the enemy. And according to the federal laws of U.S. Code, you can get the maximum is a death penalty. Right? Yeah, and anyone else involved, so be it. But we'll have to back it up. But one thing I know for sure, it is comical. Hypocrisy to the fullest. Well, I give Laura Loomer props on this, whether you like her or not. Talking of appreciation. And always, folks, observe responsibly. Well, that will be it. I thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, recommendations, all that good stuff, whatever you do, please use Decorum. You can hit me via email to ll3-podcast@proton.me. I will leave the footnotes on this episode, so you can check it out yourselves. And if you want to donate, go to PayPal at me or Cash at @/look3. Hit me at Steemit LL3-Podcast. Once again, thank you for your time. But always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading the love. And may your guardian spirits be with you.